We are so blessed here today, yes? Yes. Wow. So, I've been doing a little mini metaphysical Bible journey over these past couple weeks, and this is the end of that. Just did 3 weeks and just took different Bible stories and helping you to see a different way to look at them and to interpret them the way that we do Bible interpretation here. If you're new to Unity, is we do not look at did it or didn't happen. We don't look at the literal experience of it. Instead, we look at the spiritual interpretation in terms of the evolution of your consciousness. So very simply, the people, the places, and the things in the story represent different aspects of your journey. And when you understand how that works, it becomes a much deeper experience, and you begin to see, oh, there really is great wisdom and guidance within the Bible. I, as a child, wanted nothing to do with, I was raised Catholic, so we didn't have to worry about the Bible too much. Sat up on the shelf, and it held our birth certificates in there. But every once in a while, I would open it. I would look in it and see, and it's impossible for a child's mind on their own. It's impossible for an adult's mind on their own to understand what's inside of there. But I remember specifically feeling great fear because I was looking specifically for where I was the one that was being condemned in this book. Now, just take a moment. You may relate to that. That is, I consider, a pretty profound abuse to a young child's mind. Don't you think? That's too much trauma for a child to consider or comprehend, or just to sit there and think about the idea that I may be unacceptable in this thing called God's eyes, and this book is going to confirm it. Those are memories I had 7, 8 years old, 9 years old. So you may relate to that in different ways, but the gift of Unity for me when it came into my life as a young adult or young teenager actually was this very process of interpreting these stories from an affirmative place, from the mindset of perfect love, perfect wholeness. And what a healing happened for me. I mean, clearly I'm standing here as a minister. Something happened, right? So watch out, you might be next to me. All right, so the first week we looked at Adam and Eve, and we talked about that. And last week we looked at the story of David and Goliath and interpreted that as a story of really love versus fear. And that within you are the David of love is within you, and that David had 5 stones which represent the perfect gifts and skills that he has to face whatever's on his journey for his life. And the message for us last week was every one of us has within us exactly what we need when it's time to face our Goliaths, when it's time to climb a mountain, when it's time to tell a mountain to move out of the way. Whatever it is, you have the perfect talents, the perfect mind, the perfect training, the skills, everything is inside of you. Isn't that good to know? Because sometimes we do forget that, do we not? Yes. So today, we're going to jump into the New Testament. We spent the past 2 Sundays in the Old Testament. You may not have known that, but now you do. And we're going to look at the story of the Prodigal Son. Again, a very familiar story for all of us. But let's take a look and see what's in this for us all. So the prodigal son, let me break this down. There's a father, very, very, very wealthy man, and he has 2 sons, the prodigal son and the good son. And as the story goes, the prodigal son comes of age, and he goes to see his father, and he says, hey, I would like my inheritance. I'm out of here. And so the father, without even batting an eye, imagine writes him a check, a nice big check. Let's make it contemporary. He hops in a plane, goes to New York City, gets himself a nice big loft in Soho, and he's partying it up. He's got friends and people coming, and the wine and the everything, the women and the men and the song, and everything's flowing. Everything is crazy. And he keeps blowing through the money and blowing through the money. He's out of control. He's out of control. And eventually, the inheritance starts to run out and then becomes completely depleted. So what happens to all these friends, all these people he's partying with? Of course, they disappear because the friendship was based on what he was giving them and bringing them and what they were doing together. And so they were gone. Imagine that sexy loft disappearing because he didn't have the money to pay for it. And imagine him landing in a back alley of New York City by himself, dirty, broken, lost, completely alone. And it's in that moment that something wakes up in him. And that something says that, hey, wait a minute. I could go home and be one of my dad's workers and have a better life than I have right now. I could go back and be a servant in my dad's house and have a better life than where I am right now. And that realization lifted him up. And as the story goes, he found his way home. And imagine now, we'll place him in Iowa. They were rich in Iowa. I don't know why, I just imagine big cornfields in Iowa. So he's walking down this dirt road in his big fields, and there's a big mansion. And the father from the home sees him coming. And he runs out into the street. The father is overjoyed. All he sees is his son coming home. And his son's like, no, I'm not worthy. No, please, no. Just give me a job. Give me a meager job. And the father won't have it. He's just like hugging him and loving him and saying, oh my God, you're home. Let's have a big party. So that night, everyone's invited. There's a huge party. Everyone's just absolutely thrilled, except for the other son, the good son, who was really mad. He was really mad. And he's off pouting. You ever do that at a party? I have. I'm really good at it, actually. You won't give me attention? Oh, I'll get your attention. I'll look so broken I can't walk. That's what the good son did. And sure enough, he got his dad's attention. And as the story goes, his dad goes over and says, what's up? And he's furious. I have stayed here. I have worked for the family business. I have taken nothing from you. And this guy takes off, blows half of our riches, comes home, and you're just throwing him a party. And the father, pure love, looks at his son and says, my son, everything I have is always yours. And that's how the story ends. So, this is a story of humility. This is a story of breaking down the ego to the point where you finally throw up your hands and surrender. This book that we're studying on Wednesdays, The Way of Mastery, really just thrills me beyond belief. It says, your way must fail. For your way begins with the illusory, insane assumption that you are a separate being from the mind of God, and therefore must direct your own course. So when the prodigal son goes off, when you go off, I'm going to make something happen. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go separate from my source and the connection to God. When that happens, that must fail. This is literally what it's saying. Your way must always fail. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? But what it's really talking about is you are not separate from God. And when you allow yourself to stay in the flow of that grace, of that love, of that productivity, it will flow through you and you will prosper and you will have wonderful things and your life will be beautiful. But if you forget this and if you get thirsty for the things of this world and if you want to be a big shot in the world and you want to have that big loft in the big city and everyone thinks you're fabulous, that is separate from God. If you want to show people how great you're going to be, When the ego inside of us takes over and it starts running the show, it's the thing that's going to make it happen. It's the thing that's going to show those people. When the ego takes over, that is the separate from God experience, and that must fail. The truth of the matter is, in our country and in our world, from that ego, I will show you, people have built billion-dollar businesses. People have built unbelievable houses. Has anyone gone down Gulf Shore, whatever that's called? Not saying that they're bad people at all, I don't know them. But what I would bet, and not picking on anybody, I bet a few of them in there somewhere are in fear, suffering. Oh my God, I'm going to lose this. Fighting with their children because they won't work and they want that. Experiencing enormous success, but not happy. Something's wrong. And that something that's wrong is it was built separate from the love and the flow of God. Again, nothing wrong with anybody. We all do it. We've all tried it. It's an important thing to happen. It was important to the prodigal son. Why? Because that was the best way to have the experience. If anyone has moved through an addiction, you know exactly what we're talking about. That is a story of an addictive pull that takes us so far away from who we are and who we're here to be that we finally land flat on our butt alone. And that's when we whisper, God, help me. Your way, separate from this love, must fail. Take a breath. Take a breath on that. It's perfect. It's perfect. I hope it puts a little bit of fear in you that you'll at least go, okay, God, join me on this. At least pull a little energy inside of that. You know, it's interesting. I don't know why I'm going to tell you this, but I am. When I got into recovery and ended up at a treatment center when I was 24 and got home, I wish I could tell you that I was completely recovered. No, I was not done. I wasn't done. I was 24 and there was still a little bit. I still had to prove that I could do it on my own. But something had happened in the treatment center. At least a part of me had woken up. So you know what I would do? Before I would go use with my friends, I would pause and I would pray and I would bring God with me. It was the best I could do. It was the best I could do. Because you know that thing where you go, I know I'm going to go do this. I know I'm going to say this. I know I'm going to cut that person till they hurt. I know this is going to happen because there's a pattern that isn't done yet. It's the pattern that is still running you. And so when that pattern comes in, and because somehow I had this inside me, like this pattern isn't done, but at least I can begin bringing God into it. You can do that, and that's for real. If you feel that rage rise up, if you feel that cutting part, whatever, if you feel that in you, you can say, God, come with me, because these words are coming out of my mouth. So come with me. Those little moments begin to break the pattern. So it says, back to the book, it requires great humility to accept the first step of the path. And the first step of the path is, I have done all this. I must undo it. But I have no idea how I did this. Therefore, I must surrender to something else. It's very profound because where people get lost is they miss the first line. I have done all this. In your experience, you've created whatever you're sitting in the middle of, and you must be the one that it gets undone through. But you don't know how to do that, so don't even try. There is something else. There is something else. And the prodigal son didn't even know what that something else was. He was just in so much pain, and that's usually what it takes. Usually we're just in so much pain, we're so sick and tired of being sick and tired that we say, something help me. Something help me, because this pattern of pain is not working. It's separating me. The first step is that we must take responsibility for our creation. Responsibility, not blame and not shame. If you take blame and shame, you're going to get goofy and go spit it onto somebody else. Blame and shame is never what we're talking about. Responsibility is loving. Responsibility is open. Responsibility has the ability to kind of look from a distance and go, yeah, I did that. I did that. Wow, I did that. I did that. And because I did it, it must be undone through me. I don't need to know how. In fact, I don't know how, but there is something else. And in that moment, that's when the prodigal son stood up. Another quote from The Way of Mastery. If you would make your commitment to trusting your Creator for having set before you a pathway that can lead you home, you will indeed arrive at home. Isn't that wonderful? If you would make your commitment, my apologies on that, your commitment to trusting your Creator, trusting God, trusting the universe, trusting the divine intelligence, trusting love, that there is a pathway that can lead you back to the Father's house, the Mother's house, the kingdom of heaven, whatever you call it. There's a pathway already appointed. And the prodigal son, in the surrender moment, was lifted up and walked that pathway. He walked that pathway. And in that, the Father's love wraps around him. Next slide, please. God's love does not judge. God's love has no story about you. The only person who's keeping score is you and maybe your sister or brother. I mean, we've kind of attracted some scorekeepers around us. But the reason I have scorekeepers around me is because I'm scorekeeping. I'm keeping score. And because I'm keeping score, and because let's just be real about this, you guys, because I was raised in conditional love. I was raised by scorekeepers. My parents kept score. My grandparents kept score. Everyone was keeping score. The school system kept score. Everywhere, Santa Claus was keeping score, for God's sake. Everybody was keeping score on me. So how can I begin to comprehend the most amazing gift in the center of this story, which is there is no punishing God. There is no God that sees the mess. There's no God that sees how sloppy and dirty you got. There's no God that sees anything. No disease, no nothing, no age, no anything. The God, when you come home to the God in your heart, that life force, that whatever you feel it as or see it as, wraps its arm around you and says, you are so loved here. You are all love. I'm so happy you're home. I'm so happy you're home. There's an interesting story. I don't know if I told it before, but I may. If I did, I'm going to tell it again. I have a woman came to see me years ago up in Chicago. She had just gotten out of a, beyond and back, like she died and came back, near-death experience. She was in a bad car accident. She died. She was dead for X number of minutes, and they brought her back. And during that time of being dead, according to her, and this was a young lesbian woman whose family had thrown her out because of who she was, a fundamental Christian family that literally threw her things on the lawn and said, you will burn in hell. And so when she was dying, she remembers having the thought, this is my hell. I'm going to burn in hell now. And so in her story, she's in this, she goes and there's these beautiful guides who are greeting her. It's just like how the story sounds and what you see in the movies. And they're greeting her, and she goes, oh, no, I'm a lesbian. I'm supposed to go to hell. And the guides are like, no, you're fine. You're in the right place. But she's insistent that this is not acceptable. So as it goes for her, the guides lead her to God, to this, she describes as this light and this love, and it's starting to merge with her, and she tells God, no, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm a lesbian. I'm supposed to go to hell. And God's love infuses her and says to her, well, you are going to go back to earth. So close. But your job is going to be to tell the world that I do not condemn anyone for their sexual orientation or gender. She was literally given that assignment to come back to earth and be the very healing that she had in that experience. That is God's love. Every ridiculous story you've been told about why you're not good enough, everything you're holding on to doesn't exist in God. Take a breath. Just repeat after me. God loves me unconditionally. Breathe that in. It's so true. All right. I'm like going on and on. Wow, you're going to stay late today, people. Lucky you. So the next thing that I want to point at in this story is the inheritance. You see, when we're out on our own, like the prodigal son, and then addiction is a great example of that, or when you're just out there making life happen from the ego standpoint, you lose your inheritance. The inheritance in the story doesn't represent the things of this world, although that's how the story goes. The inheritance represents your spiritual powers. And Unity here has one of the most wonderful teachings called the 12 powers. And our powers are our will, our understanding, our imagination, our faith, our zeal, our power, our love, our strength, our life, our wisdom, our order, our power of elimination. These powers are your inheritance. You are wired with them. They will never be depleted. All that I have is yours. These are the aspects. Unity has turned this into a representation of the aspects of God's powers in you. And when you're out there on your own, you get willful instead of willing. You lose your understanding. Your imagination gets ruined because all you do is imagine the bad things. Your faith is dissolved. Your zeal is depleted. Your power is misused until you're completely powerless. The love dissolves, the strength, all of these. This is what he lost. This is what we lose when we're separate from God. This is what happens when we're out there creating on our own. When we say to God's love, I'm out of here. I believe the God in the Bible that's destructive, I don't want it. I'm out of here. And out on your own you go with your pack on. This is your inheritance. And it will be depleted if it's not plugged in to the infinite source pool. Does that make sense? Very, very important. And these are the things that get restored. These will be restored every time. Reconnect with God, you're restored. It all comes back to life like that. Let's look at the good son. Oh, he was not happy. He was not happy. You have this in you. Pay attention. This is the scorekeeper. This is the one who's moving through life trying to be good. Do all the right things so I'm acceptable. Do all the right things even when it doesn't feel right inside of me. Create personas and images of who I am and play small and put me in a box and be really good so at the end of the day I get to win the game. Spending a lifetime trying to be good, trying to prove something. We all are plagued by this in different ways. And at the end of the day, when the smelly addict comes in and gets all the accolades, are you not pissed off or what? When your story, when all you're trying to be good blows up and someone surpasses you immediately by not following the rules, you followed the rules for God's sake. That's what everyone should do. This is how it's supposed to be. And someone walks right over you. They have a whole different way of being in the world. They have access to something else. Whatever they're doing. But this is the one that I invite you to pay attention, not the prodigal son. The prodigal son in you, let him go party, have his fun. He'll find his way home. He's fine. This is your scary one. And I'm not kidding on this. I'm not kidding on this, especially the demographic and you here. We're all raised in this nice little, I'm going to use the words, nice little white world where we're just sort of really, we've been so taught all of these rules. They are the very things that must be busted open. And they must be broken. Follow rules if you want to follow rules. And if they help you, great. But if you're doing it to be good, if you're doing it to get something, if you're doing it because you think someone else is keeping score, if you're doing it to try to get some love, that's where, as I read in the beginning, it must fail. It won't work. And your rule book will be thrown out, and your box will be busted open, and it will feel so unfair. That is perfect. That is beautiful, because that means you too, that other part of you, both inside of you, that part too gets to come home. Both must be healed. Do you get the magic of this story? The naive mind says, oh, prodigal son bad, good son good. Both aspects of your mind trying to do it on your own. Both must be surrendered. And in the story, both are transformed, because what does God say? God says, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. This is what brings us home. This is what heals our heart. This is what stops the good part of you from trying to be good and the crazy part of you from trying to be crazy. Do you get how they're the opposite sides of the same coin? Try to be good for so long, and then watch the prodigal son go grab those double stuffed Oreos and shove them down your throat. Just me? Just me? I could list a lot of other things you crazy people do in your private world. I know, but I'm going to leave you alone today. But try to be good for so long and watch how that prodigal son goes, I'll give you relief. I'll give you something. Let's go blow this up. Both of you, same coin. Today we throw the coin out. Today we surrender that. And we say, God's will be done. I want to go home. Do you want to go home to the heart of God? Please join me. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. God says to you, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. Inside of you are all the beautiful, beautiful qualities of God's love. Take a deep breath. I am the love of God. I am the presence and the power of God. I am all those magnificent qualities of being. That's who and what I am. And that's all I ever will be. That is the truth. And in this moment, for myself and for all of us here and for all those watching live streaming, for the one that is lost, I take that coin, the good son, the prodigal son, the flipping it, the sickness of it all, and place it on the altar of the Holy Spirit. In your mind's eye, imagine placing that coin on the altar. I'm done. I'm going home. I'm done being good. I'm done being bad. I'm done trying to build and create and be outside of God's love. It's impossible. Today, I am love. I am the love of God. I am the power of God. I am the freedom of God. I am the zeal of God. I am the strength and the truth and the wisdom of God. And that unconditioned love is for me now, and I accept it. I accept the unconditioned love of God. Take a breath.
I am divinity defined. I am a God on the inside. I am a star, a piece of it all. I am light. I am love. I
Sing along. I am love. I am love. I am love. I am love. Keep singing. I am love. I am love. I am love. I am love. Just these guys, sing it, just you guys. I am love. I am love. I am love. I am love. Keep singing. I am love. I am love. One more. I am love. I am love. Feel that. Feel that. So grateful for the healing and the revelation and the love of God. So grateful for coming home as many times as we have to. So grateful. Because I know that now that we've come home and we realize who we and what we are, that the healing of all disease, disaster, discomfort, disappointment, it all gets to dissolve now. I'm grateful for the fulfillment of this prayer and the revelation of God's love and the surrender of that silly game of being good or bad. We are healed this day. I feel it. I know it. And in gratitude, I release this prayer. It is done, and so it is. Amen. Amen. Good. Good.